Amy Camie, welcome to the Learning Vibes podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And Annie, I know I've shared with you my preliminary conversation with Amy. She's just such an interesting person. I have no idea where this conversation is going to go because she's an expert on so much, but I'm just delighted to have her here, Annie.
Yeah, this is exciting. And I know that this is a podcast, so you can't see us on Zoom, but I see that the title of your company is the Healing Harpist, or that's how you identify yourself. Is that right, Amy?
Yes, that's correct. That's the easiest way people can find me, just the Healing Harpist.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, Amy. And if you do want to plug your website, social media projects, feel free. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, Amy.
All right. Well, I actually grew up in Godfrey, Illinois, which is across the river from St. Louis. I was adopted when I was 1 month old, and both of my parents are music teachers. So I have known my whole life that I'm exactly where I need to be because they nurtured my gift of music. I started piano lessons when I was 5 and harp lessons when I was 10. I'm classically trained. I went to Indiana University and studied with world-renowned teachers. And although I did not graduate with a performance degree, I changed my major my freshman year because aren't we all supposed to do that,
Yeah.
So I changed my major to telecommunications with an emphasis in psychology. I just found how people think and the emotion. I found that really interesting. But I continued to take lessons with Suzanne McDonald and Linda Wood. So I graduated in 87. I came home and a friend was going through hospice care. And I didn't even know what hospice was at the time, but something inside of me just inspired me to sit down and make a cassette tape. I mean, that's way back. That's dating this. So I just made this cassette tape for her to listen to. And another friend was with her and shared with us that you could literally see her body relax when the music was playing. And honestly, that is the first time I ever thought about music and healing. But that was what kind of started me on this journey that I've been on ever since.
Yeah, and tell us about that journey, music and healing. What are some of the things you have learned and what are you exploring now? Go.
Well, that's a very loaded question.
Yes.
And it has a lot of moving parts. And the music and healing journey really paralleled my journey of self-discovery, because shortly after I graduated, I was a classically trained musician playing music in front of me. Don't take my sheet music away from me because I really wouldn't know what to play then. And during this time, I met and eventually married my husband, John, and he is, I like to call him a spiritual visionary and a creative genius. And he just expanded my perception about everything. And we were walking this spiritual journey based upon his gifts and his insights. And I was turning the mirror and I was finding and discovering things about myself, like my fears, what was keeping me stuck. Why was I afraid to play my own music? Why did I think I even deserved to play that? How was my adoption affecting my creative expression? All of this was like this big mush and mash of energy that was moving inside. And then the music and healing part, I was continuing to play music, and I found New Age music really fascinating because I played piano, and I found artists like Jim Brickman and David Lanz and Michael Scott. And I love the syncopation. I loved the melodic flow. It just opened something inside of me. And my dad had recently then gone through prostate cancer surgery, and I wanted to record something to help him relax. So I knew enough that musicians listen to music differently than non-musicians. musicians tend to analyze it. What's the key? When did I play it? All those questions and those associations. But I knew my dad didn't know anything about New Age music. So I recorded the CD for him. So we've transferred from cassette tapes to CDs. And he used that to help him relax. And, my intention when I recorded that was to help my dad. That was the love moving through that music. And fast forward a few years, after people were listening to it, we met a neurotherapist. His name is Dr. William Collins, and he's here in St. Louis. And he was fascinated by the stories that we were sharing with him about how, people who hadn't been able to sleep in years were able to sleep with this music. And, it's just all of this positive, wonderful feedback. And so he offered to do our first quantitative EEG pilot study, looking at people's brainwaves when they listened to this music. And we showed that it lowered the beta waves and increased the alpha waves in 4 minutes. And that literally translates to relaxing and calming the brain in 4 minutes, so that you could experience a sense of relaxation, which is exactly my intention that I had when I recorded it, to help my dad relax and heal. So that was another then spark of inspiration, like, oh, there's something here about this idea of intention. And how does the music originate and what's moving through the sound? And so that just opened a whole nother Pandora's box of questions that we've been exploring over the last few years.
You have already said so much that I want to follow up on and ask about. Is it, in your view, unique to New Age music that it has this impact? You talked about the syncopation of it, the melodic flow of it. Why? What is it about New Age music that they wouldn't also get from more traditional classical, from jazz, from rock? Could we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, my feeling is, and I know for my dad, the two aspects that helped him experience that sense of relaxation and that helped other people experience that sense of relaxation is, number one, it was probably unfamiliar. It was probably music they had no association with. And that's a key point when we really want to relax our brain and our bodies. If we listen to music that we've already had an association with, then our beta waves are active, our memories are engaged. We have expectations. We have pre-processed feelings and emotions associated with that music. So that's one reason I feel like that genre of New Age music, so to speak, it's simply because people are not familiar with it. And then the tempo and the rhythm and the pace of that music, that affects, it's called entrainment. We've got 3 rhythmic systems in our body. We've got our brain waves, our breathing, and our heart rate. And they are affected by this concept of entrainment. It's the rhythmic aspect of resonance. It's like if we started clapping, then we would come into sync. And so the pace, the rhythm of the music literally syncs up our brainwaves, our breathing, and our heart rate. And those 3 rhythm systems entrain with each other. So I feel like those 2 aspects of New Age music are probably influential in why people can just relax into that.
Yeah.
Do you find that with this entrainment, is that what you said it was?
Yes.
That it also helps with people who, not only for healing, but so this is where this is coming from. So my son is pretty active person, right? But he listens to music that he's not familiar with when he's studying, or like those types of things. And so hearing these kind of 3 rhythms, I can see his body almost calm. Now I am not a person who can listen to music while I'm doing it, but I think that maybe if it was the quote right type of music. So is there any type of research or thinking behind that as you're thinking of these 3 rhythms and thinking about the idea of calming and kind of focusing?
Well, like you said, you don't listen to music. I think it's more of an individual response. Like for me, I like silence. And some people don't like silence because maybe there's a lot inside that if they get still, it's going to start coming up, right? And other people like to have that mental distraction. And if it's music that they're not familiar with, then they don't have the memories that they're connecting to, so they can kind of refocus on whatever they're focusing on right there in the moment. So I feel like it's an individual response to music.
I see you have your harp with you. Is there a demonstration you could do to help us better to illustrate? Is there a demonstration you could do to illustrate some of these things about pacing that you have mentioned and other elements of it that allow those three systems to align?
Sure. And I love to use the harp as a metaphor for who we are. So the harp has all of these different strings. And I like to say, what if we imagine that all of these strings, each individual string is a unique aspect of ourselves. It's a unique feeling, a belief, a fear, a dream, a desire, all of these energetic aspects that we have within us create the wholeness of who we are, just like all of these strings create the wholeness of this instrument, okay? And so a lot of times, this feels like life. We're just kind of crazy, a little chaotic, lots of things happening. And then if we slow down, this and this are literally using the same strings. It's just we slowed it down. We slowed the pace down. We slowed the rhythm down so that we could create more space between the notes, more space between our thoughts, more space between our breath, our feelings. And so that's a demonstration of how just slowing down can transform chaos inside of us into harmony. And it's simply by just creating more space. And that being said, I don't know if you know, but I actually have gone through breast cancer twice. And I learned a lot about myself. And I call these learnings life lessons. And I had been doing this journey of self-exploration for years before I was diagnosed. So turning the mirror and reflecting on how I was feeling in the moment was kind of normal for me during all of this. And I knew that my journey with breast cancer was to also remember how to love myself and just receive love for myself. And one of the biggest life lessons was about what I just demonstrated. When I'm caught in doing, I'm resisting being. And, when we're forced to slow down, whether it's a health issue or whatever it is, okay, we're forced to slow down, then we create that space, and that space then allows what's underneath it to surface and bubble up. And I know for me, and my husband calls it production mode, even though I know this stuff in my head, it's still, we're human beings, we forget, it spirals down into deeper learnings. But that is still something that I consciously have to be aware of. Like when I'm caught in doing, what am I resisting being? What am I resisting? That's right under my conscious awareness.
So what is the Healing Harpist? Like, what are the types of environments you go into to help with this syncing of your body's rhythm and putting space between your breaths and calming down your, like, do you go into yoga studios? Do you go into do you have classes? Like, what's the venue that you go in and do this work?
Thank you for asking. I actually have been playing in this way for many years, and I didn't even know what it was called. There's a whole movement of therapeutic musicians that are getting certified now, and we are trained to use the concepts of resonance, sympathetic vibration, forced resonance, and entrainment to go into patients' spaces and share music that will support the healing process. All right, so therapeutic musicians are different than music therapists. We use music in different ways. All right, so I love articulating that difference because a lot of people aren't even aware that there's this whole new field, and it's not new, it's very old, of therapeutic musicians. And my particular certification is as a certified clinical musician. There's 4 or 5 different programs that you can go through, receive the training, and then have a title. I chose to go by the Healing Harpist because I've been doing it for many years. It aligns with my email address. And honestly, in St. Louis, we have such a wonderful community of harpists. And just by identification, like we have the symphony harpist, we have the jazz harpist, we have the Irish harpist, we have the classical harpist, and we have the healing harpist. And so it's kind of just an easy way of identification. But on a really deeper level, for me, healing is about finding that balance. It's about looking at all of these aspects of ourselves and bringing them into balance with who we are. So the music that I love to share, I do it through recordings. I have a lot of CDs that help people just come into that sacred space of healing and balance within themselves. And then I played for yoga classes. I love doing sacred ceremonies, whether it's at temples or churches. My husband and I often do events where he reads or he just goes into a lyrical vocal journey, and I accompany him and play, and we co-create and collaborate this beautiful, we call them a soul's journey. It's a very meditative experience. So it's really using the harp on all of these different levels to visualize balance, to share music. And then I also have webinars and programs. I call them conscious self-care. And those are on my website. There are live videos, there are little glimpses and nuggets demonstrating these concepts of resonance and sympathetic vibration and entrainment.
One thing I think I hear you saying then is it's not just about serving those with physical health needs, but also emotional support, emotional healing, psychological healing, self-care. Could you talk a little more about the emotional and self-care element to this?
Sure. In my perspective, we're all human beings, and we all are affected by these concepts of resonance and entrainment and sympathetic vibration. And we have emotional experiences. We perceive and interpret those experiences based on our own personal perspective and beliefs. And they get hooked up, they get repressed. We embody all of them. Sometimes I like to share this little example. Like I'm 9 years old and I'm playing piano and I'm singing. If a picture paints 1,000 words, then why can't I paint you? And my dad, he jokingly just turns around the corner and he goes, "Amy, why don't you stick to playing piano?" And he didn't mean it. He was totally joking, but my 9-year-old, and I adore my parents, but what I heard and how I interpreted that was, Amy, you can't sing. Don't use your voice.
Mm.
And that gets hooked up, and so it becomes like this subconscious programming that motivates and inspires my choices. And then when I'm older and these lyrics start moving through and I'm writing songs, part of me is pissed off. I'm like mad, and I couldn't figure out why. Well, part of this conscious self-care stuff is about turning the mirror and getting inside and exploring these old patterns and these beliefs that are motivating our choices in the moment. And that's when I discovered and I remembered, oh yeah, I could see how that experience created these threads and these patterns of actions and choices. And we're just full. See, we are full of these energetic components and aspects, not just from our own experiences, but from that which we've inherited. My whole thing is just being compassionate with ourselves as we move through life day by day. We just do the best we can. And if we're honest with ourselves, then we can learn a lot about ourselves. I will totally admit, I cut my feelings off. I didn't want to feel for a really long time, and that's a protective mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
My mind was just trying to protect me
Mm-hmm.
from feeling what I thought was too painful.
So not just then those who receive your compositions and receive the music, but I think I hear you saying that for you, the composing and recording of the music also was a healing journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The music that moves through me is a reflection of where I am within myself. I feel like all expression brings that which is within us out into the world. I don't care if it's music or art or gardening or listening to somebody or cooking or just touching somebody's hand. All of these expressions create connections with other human beings. And I see them as like tubes. It's like tubes. They're highways of expression, and they carry whatever's within us out into the world. So I really became aware of that when I did the first CD for my dad, and that's called New Love Awaken to Yourself. That's the new age piano solos. My intention was to help him relax and heal. That's what we were showing was happening in the listener through the quantitative EEG and the responses. Another CD that gave me a different experience is called The Magic Mirror. And that CD was inspired by ancient healing chants that my husband shared with me. So he told me what the chant was, and he was visualizing it for me. He was kind of describing how these chants were being used by the ancient ones. And something inside of me woke up. And it's like this music started playing me from the inside. It was almost like there was a memory or a remembrance of like, here it is, Amy, wake up, remember this. And it played me like a radio inside. I was not creating it from my head. I was just listening to it. And really the only reason we went in to record the CD was to get the music out of me. So I know that highway, that expression was a clear highway. It didn't have any of my personal intention. I wanted to help my dad relax. That was my love for my father. The Magic Mirror was a totally different experience. And that highway's clear. And we've done pilot studies with that music that showed how it normalized neurological functioning in 5 cancer patients going through chemotherapy in 10 days. Like everyone we did quantitative EEG, gave them the CD, they listened to it once a day for 10 days, came back and did quantitative EEG again. And every imbalance tended to normalize. So I had to figure out how do I describe that? How do I explain what I believe is happening with that? It's like they got individualized results from one piece of music. And I feel it's because the highway was clear and they received exactly what they needed. And I listened to that music. When I was going through treatment, I listened to it twice a day. And so it's like this beautiful circle. You know, I'll express something, I'll create something, I'll create a CD or whatever, but then I get to receive it back for myself. So it's just this, it's a beautiful spiral.
I'm wondering, from your perspective as a patient and also in interacting with others, do you think there first has to be an awareness on the part of the patient that this will help me? Or does the act of listening lead to the realization that it will be helpful? Or maybe I'm falling too much into an either or dichotomy. Maybe there is no awareness on the patient's part of the impact of this. Could you talk about what you think it does for the patient?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love your question because I feel like it's all of the above. I've had people, I mean, I can't tell you the testimonials. I mean, they're all on my website if you want to look at it. This particular piece of music, the Magic Mirror, I've had testimonials from infants and babies who could not eat, who would then start taking nutrition, to hospice transition. You know, I mean, and everything in between, the soldiers, the college students, the caregivers, the autism, the Alzheimer's. I mean, people have used this music in so many different ways. And I know, like an infant or a baby, they're not going to have an intention. They're not going to care. They're not going to know. They're not going to be aware that, oh, this music is going to help me. But when grandma plays it, I want to listen to it, you know, or when I'm tired, I want to go to sleep to it. So they have this innocent initial experience. And again, I just feel like they're feeling that healing energy, that love, that unconditional love moving through, and they're receiving it however they need to receive it in the moment. And sure, other times I have people come and say, I have a friend who was just diagnosed with cancer. I need that music. I need to give them that music. And I know that they're giving them that music, telling them about our pilot studies. So that patient is going to listen to it with an expectation. And yeah, are we dealing with placebo? Maybe. And maybe not. You know, I feel like it's also the same question that people need to ask themselves about. Like, there's a lot of marketing right now with music because it's being produced in a very specific way to elicit very specific outcomes. So if a producer is creating a CD for sleep, they may embed the different frequencies in that music to subconsciously entrain the brain waves to help people go to sleep. If they may want to put binaural beats into the music. They may want to intentionally create a CD or music at a particular rhythm, you know, at 60 beats per minute to entrain the heartbeat. So there's a lot of ways to produce music with the intention of eliciting a specific result. And then they market it that way. And if somebody needs that, they're going to see the marketing, they're going to believe it, they're going to listen to it, and then they're going to experience it. Now, was it because it really worked that way, or was it because the person believed that it was going to work that way, right? And that's all great. That's fine. You know, I just want people to be conscious consumers and to be responsible and not just to fall prey to the marketing piece. With the Magic Mirror, I feel like that's a little different only because I don't have an intention moving through it to elicit a specific response. So the highway is clear so that the individual can experience whatever they need in that moment. And personally, I've experienced that music in so many different ways, depending on where I am. And we're organic beings. We are constantly changing. We are never in the same place ever because we're in constant motion and constant changing. So again, I believe all music can be healing if we listen consciously. Even heavy metal, rap, it can all be healing if we're using the definition of healing in a way of finding our balance.
And what does it, I mean, again, Amy, with every sentence you utter, I think of like 37 follow-up questions. So I'm struggling to know where to go here. When you say listening consciously, I think was your phrase, what does that mean? How do we listen consciously?
All right, I'll share just personal experiences and give you examples and stories, okay? So when our kids were younger, they loved listening to heavy metal music. So when we would drive to school, we'd listen to metal music, death metal, black metal. Who knew that there were so many kinds of metal music? And initially, I felt this resistance inside of me.
Yeah.
Because I perceived that music was angry and harsh and that just, the growling, and it was just so much. And then I just asked questions. I was like, okay, so what are they saying? What's the story behind this? And then I started listening with a different perspective, like, oh, this is actually a human being expressing a myth, a story, an ancient tale, or this was an individual, a human being expressing grief about losing their son, or whatever the circumstance was. But I heard the music from a place of an expression of another human being, and then I realized, I turned the mirror, and when I felt it being angry, I had to turn the mirror and say, okay, why am I resisting this? It's because I wasn't ready to explore the anger within me. It was sympathetically resonating. And that means when two objects of the same frequency come into close proximity, they create this resonant system. They begin to sing together. It's like when two tuning forks, you strike one and you put the other one right next to it. There's that sound wave is moving through the air and it's activating the one that's next to it, but it has to be the same frequency. So when I was feeling that frequency of anger, it woke up inside of me. And one day I was ready to look. So I dropped the kids off. I pulled into the driveway and I let that music go inside. And I let that music open those spaces and get into those hidden places, those crevices, that repressed energy, that repressed anger and resentment and whatever else was in there. That music woke it up. It started to move. And then I could feel it. I could be honest with myself. Those are those low notes down here in the harp, those low vibrations. But I wasn't afraid of it. So I was consciously using the vibrations of the music and letting it inside of me so that it could wake up those frequencies. And then that could become part of the wholeness of who I am. I could integrate it then. And for me, that's healing.
Do you think, is there a relationship between that initial resistance and impact on you? Do you think, I don't know how to phrase the question, because you had an initial resistance to it, should people see that as almost an indication that means they need to be more open to it? Is there a relationship between resistance and the ultimate impact?
And that is a personal question. For me, if I feel resistance, because I am who I am and because I've been doing this for so long, I feel safe enough to turn the mirror and explore it. For other people who feel the resistance, it may be a very important clue of just not now, it's not time. Don't push. Sometimes people who push too fast, they have what we call an emotional release. All of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh. And then all the tears start and believe me, I've been there, done that, and gone through a lot of those. And if the person has the tools to deal with the energy that's moving, that's great. A lot of times this is what therapy is for. This is what therapists are for, to help navigate that journey of self-exploration. Mm-hmm. So it's a gentle process. That's why I always like to encourage people to just be gentle. It'll meet you where you are and it'll take you where you're willing to go, but it's at your own pace. Like, we have all of our own answers inside of us. I truly believe that. And we are so full, like nobody knows the fullness of anybody else. So nobody really knows what that one song might trigger, or what that one awareness might be connected to. And so gentleness for me is just the key. But the resistance is a signal. And so one of the things I like to do, I don't do it a lot, but it's like driving around the car, listening to the radio, just push next. Like, I'm not somebody who will consciously choose to listen to a country music station. But if it shows up, that I allow myself the space to listen with different ears and try to feel the story and feel it as an expression of another human being. And then find that place within me where I can relate, instead of cutting it off and judging it immediately. Where's that common ground? Where's that common humanity? Where's that experience that person is having that I've also had? I may not have expressed it in the same way through that type of music, but I might express it someplace else. But at least that gives me a common ground and I can listen to it from that space. And for me, that builds compassion within myself and empathy for other people.
And I was going down that. My brain was thinking about country music when you said like the metal music. And then I was thinking, a lot of people say they don't like country music, especially in the Midwest or, like in northern states. Yeah. And so thinking about turning that mirror, like, what is it about it? Well, I was thinking, just sitting here and thinking, a lot of times it's, in my perception, it's sad, sappy music. Like, my girlfriend left me, my dog died, right? And it's like, And then I went down the path of thinking, like, I don't know how much you follow popular music, but with Cardi B and Lizzo and with Lil Nas X lately, there's been some political outrage with the transgender population, with sex positivity is what they're portraying, but there's a lot of resistance to it. And so it's just made me really think about turning that mirror, like, why are you so against country music? Or why are you so against what is being portrayed as the intent of sex positivity, but you're not seeing it as that way? And so it just, it's just making me think about like the different types of wider political conversations that are happening around music.
It's beautiful. I wrote an article several years ago called Building Tolerance and Empathy Through Music. I have a lot of blogs and a lot of free content on my website. If anybody's interested, you can access it with amycamie.com or just go to thehealingharpist.com. And that's my Linktree page with all sorts of direct links to different things. But in that article, this is the conversation. This was what it was all about. It was really using music as a means of self-discovery and to find those aspects, find those places of resistance and ask the questions, why?
Because I know in recent years, again, going down the political avenue, my husband looks to what I would call more like, you can't find him anywhere else but on the internet. Like, it's like folk music and things that like it's not in mainstream. But he is was following a folk / country artist who is from the South, who came out with music about like Black Lives Matter and like get the vaccine, and it's okay to be transgender. So one of the bands he listens to, the lead singer is transgender and has transitioned while the band was out there, and they've lost a lot of followers, they've lost a lot of audience members. And it's just that idea of, wait, audience members that you're not following anymore, why aren't you following them? It's the idea of turning that mirror.
Yeah. I always feel like if we're judging other people, there's something about that we're judging ourselves. And as we turn the mirror and explore that, then we can see people through different eyes. Yeah, I feel like what's happening in our external world is a reflection of what's happening in our internal world.
There's so much I want to talk to you about, and I'm scared some of my questions, some of the things I'm really interested in, I'm scared are a little too much of a digression from these wonderful topics that you've established. But let me throw out two questions, and feel free to tell me that they both feel like digressions to you. But one of which is, I infer from listening to you that the responsibility is on the receiver of the art to figure out what it means to them and how it can help them. I come from a place where I believe art should, and you've also talked about this, communicate intention. How do we best think about art, whether music, whether whatever art? Is it the intention of the artist that is where we should look for that healing power? Or is it truly a much more subjective thing that whatever the listener receives, that's what they receive, and therefore it will have value? And yes, it's too much of an either or question, but do you have any reactions or thoughts on that?
It's both.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, okay. So there's different levels and there's different associations. Okay. So for example, with healing art therapy, okay, art is used as an expression for patients or people to get out their whatever it is that they're working with right there. It could be their pain, it could be their healing journey, it could be a thank you, it could be whatever it is, they're gonna right there. Okay. So my question is, do you put that on the walls of a hospital? You know, so if we feel this and are aware of this idea of every expression brings that which is within us out into the world, and then sympathetically resonates that within the observer or the listener, viewing artwork created with the intention of healing, but healing for the person, is that healing for everybody who looks at it?
Mm.
Well, it could be if the person who's looking at it is dealing with the same kind of trauma or anger or angst that person was, or not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it is a very subjective experience. Another example, there's a lot of sound healing experiences happening. All right. Crystal bowls, Tibetan bowls, toning, gongs, all okay. The sound immersion, okay? And as somebody who's pretty sensitive, okay, here's the story. My husband and I went to a conference. They had somebody playing the bowls, and it was for their morning meditation. And I had to get up and leave. I left because it just felt yucky. Next morning, somebody else was playing the bowls for morning meditation. And my husband leans over and he goes, Amy, do you need to leave? I said, no, I'll just see. Let me just feel how this happens. So this woman starts and my body opened up, my arms like, yes. It was like, oh my gosh, yes. Totally different experience. Bowls, crystal bowls. Okay. What was different? I believe like the first person had an intention to do something specific with those bowls. Sound is so powerful. Sound is like a laser. It just goes right into those cells and bones, okay? And a lot of people have the philosophy that, oh, I'm going to play a C crystal bowl and I'm going to open your root chakra. Well, don't do that in my space, please, because I can feel that. And for me, that's forced resonance. You're forcing me, your intention is forcing me out of my natural state. I feel it. It's not comfortable. I'm going to leave the space. The second person played. She had no intention. She was an open, clear channel of just pure sound, and my body loved it. Totally different experience.
Yeah.
So the expression of art, the expression of music, it moves through us. It moves through an individual in order for it to manifest in form. And I see this process, like I visualize this field of all possibility, like this pure potential. And that's where like everything exists, but nothing is manifested yet. And it's like that womb of all possibility, okay? And then we all have access to this. This is where we're kind of all connected. And then we decide, or we feel this inspiration, we're going to move this through and we're going to create this. Well, because we're all connected at that field, in that place, we all have the potential to feel something within us that's going to resonate with that, depending on where we are. So it's such a subjective experience.
Yeah.
It's like, why do we look at art and everyone views it differently? Why don't we all like the same kind of music? Because we're individuals and we are full.
Yeah.
And everything around us just resonates something within us differently.
We have about 5 or 10 minutes left here. You know, a lot of our listeners are not artists. They are business professionals. They are elementary school teachers. They are students, parents, people who just want to enrich their own learning and their own lives, and do see learning as almost an artistic experience. In closing here, at the risk of asking you to repeat yourself, in closing here, what can our listeners take away who aren't artists, but who think about lifelong learning through an artistic lens? What can we say to them?
Right. Well, I would expand your comment to include that we are all artists. It has to do with our perception.
Agreed.
We are manifested beings where creative energy flows through us. That creative energy is everything that we say, we think, we do, how we move. I love to visualize people as music because we embody all of the components of music. If you just listen to your voice is a melody. Your voice has pitch, it can go up and down. It has dynamics. It has different timbers. It has different qualities. It has different rhythms, different pace. So it's a very melodic, it can be very soft. I mean, our voice is our melody. And then when we come together and we have conversations, we're creating harmony. We're creating this beautiful combination of unique expressions. And we're rhythm. How quickly are we speaking? How fast is our brain, our thoughts moving? What is the pace at which we move through our day? We talked about transforming chaos into harmony by just slowing down. Well, how would it feel if you just brushed your teeth at a little slower pace? Or you just did dishes at a little slower pace? This idea of entrainment is really key for everybody to understand. And it's fun to implement for business people, for teachers, for anybody who is in relationship with other people. For example, when our son was young, he would ask me, and if he was having trouble going to sleep, he would ask me to come lie down with him. Not that he wanted any kind of physical touch or cuddling, but he knew that I would start changing my breathing. I would go, and I would breathe at this slower pace. And he knew that then his breathing would slow down, his brainwaves would slow down, his heart rate would slow down, and he would eventually go to sleep. So how many parents or teachers or business people out there deal with people who are a little anxious or worried or upset? If we come into that space with them and we consciously just slow down our breathing, or we slow down the pace at which we are trying to communicate, we will entrain with them. So this idea, we embody the rhythms of music. We have form, we have structure. How are we structuring our day? How do we structure the things around us? And then we're silence. We have that peace. So we are music. We are all creative beings, creating how we move through this world moment by moment.